first of all, I mean, DEI stands for diversity, equity, inclusion, right? So to me, we start by thinking, okay, what's the opposite of those things? The opposite of diversity is uniformity, right? The opposite of equity is inequity. And the opposite of inclusion is exclusion. And I don't know a lot of people who think we'd be better off if our lives had more uniformity, inequity, and exclusion, right? But I think that the part of why people have questions about it that I respect is they're not sure if this is, they're worried about fairness, right? So to me, when you talk about some of these policies, the idea is to make sure everybody gets a seat at the table. Especially if you know there have been systematic ways of keeping people from getting a seat at the table over the years, sometimes based on their race, on their religion, on their income, on their background, any number of reasons, sexuality, right? Like a lot of different reasons. And it's about making sure that what we do going forward is fair. And this can be an economic issue too. You look at something like redlining. A lot of homeowners, families, would-be homeowners, especially black families, couldn't get homes in certain neighborhoods where the property value started to go up. So even if that happened to a family, I don't know, 50 years ago, their kids are living with the consequences of that now because their family has less wealth because they were kept out of a neighborhood where property values were growing, right? And so part of it's the idea that some of these things may have started a long time ago. Maybe nobody alive today is responsible for some of the injustice that has shaped what it's like to live in this country right now. But all of us now are responsible for doing something about it. It's not about tearing anybody down. It's not about preventing anybody from thriving. But I think it gets twisted to make it look like that.
Hello. Hi. You know, I started on cleanup just like you guys. But now, see, I'm washing lettuce. Soon I'll be on fries, then the grill. A year or two, I make assistant manager. And that's where the big bucks start rolling in.
Just 2 years, eh?
Blaming DEI or affirmative action or this, that, and the third. This country is going to have a plethora of problems because DEI was, a political move. You got rid of affirmative action and they issued, let's do DEI, and that's a problem. And in essence, everybody, that's not white is unqualified, right? Same thing, with affirmative action. Everybody was, all these people who went to college were unqualified. All the people that had jobs were unqualified. And at the end of the day, you wind up putting America in a position where all of these qualified, smart people have been really just destroying this country. Whether it's, when you're blaming the corporations, that's the qualified people. When you're blaming the politicians, that's the qualified people. When you're saying, the kids are getting dumber and education is going downhill, that's the qualified people, right? So when you say all these other groups messed it up, no. See, none of these other groups are have a real foothold into corporate America's movers and shakers and CEOs and so on and so forth. No, that's not that. And when it comes to politics, it's not that. When it comes to, let's just say important positions, it's not like that. Now, some people don't want to talk about one of the things about affirmative action and DEI and all other stuff is this. For years, you've had the qualified people hiring people of other ethnicities, and even in women, and basically hiring them to fix bad situations that the people who are qualified destroy. You know, thus, this CEO, this well, black manager, supervisor, you know, they didn't fix the problem. Yeah, you're right. Y'all hired them to fix a problem that you destroy. Can't fix certain things. Now, where it gets interesting is when you're seeing, let's just say, white America uh, is really coming to terms with, oh wow, like, the corporations have screwed us, but those are the people that you said had it in your best favor. The politicians screwed us. Oh, those are the people you said had your best interest at heart. And the interesting is when the corporations were going global and taking jobs overseas, it didn't bother people because that those were the quote unquote low, let's just say low paying jobs. You had a lot of high paying jobs with people who really did nothing. And all of the people who were low on the totem pole did all the work. So America's corporate America has been bloated with a bunch of people who don't really have a real job. They have a paycheck, but they don't really do anything per se. And you've learned that over the years, you know. And then, you know, and then when you get to the affirmative action and the DEI part, uh, the majority of people in those positions are white women. So, and white women got a majority of the jobs in affirmative actions and in DEI. But all the unqualified people are talking about were looked at as black, Asian, and Hispanic. Well, not just you can say black because Asian and Hispanic. They're like Asians are smart and Hispanics are hardworking. So even the smart Asians can't help you fix these problems, and even the hardworking Hispanics can't help you fix these problems. Which you know pivots into what he was talking about at the end, like America created certain problems, and because you feel like it's not you didn't do it, you know, it's not your problem because now America is kicking you in the butt. And the issue with that becomes, okay, so these quote unquote minority groups, especially my group, we've seen it a few times where oh, let's just fix America first and then we'll get to you. And we know how that one ends. So the rising tide lifts all boats. It was a good political statement by First Lady Michelle Obama, but us as a people, we know better. So here's where you have an issue. Y'all don't know how to fix these problems because, unfortunately, y'all didn't y'all didn't even pay attention to y'all creating it. And this goes back a ways. This really goes back to President Bush because he inherited a country in the green, right? So you had the Enron scandal. Then you had, 9/11. You had the AIG, the overspending from 9/11 to go on a war with Iraq and Afghanistan. Like I said, the AIG, the housing bubble bursting, Lehman Brothers. When I say the housing bubble bursting, I should say subprime loans everything that affected that, the car market going, the car dealerships being bailed out, banks being bailed out, and subsequently, you know, the creation of more, creation of more and more debt um, across America, and people, feeling like we could live high off the hog forever and a day. And once again, I got to reiterate, those were the people that were qualified, that knew all the right people, that were the movers and shakers. People forget when they used to say, "Oh, the bankers are gambling with money." Yeah, yeah, I remember that. So now, now you have a issue where there's no nice way to say it, but once again, you need to blame somebody, and it went from affirmative action to DEI, and now it's pivoted to BlackRock. It's like, yeah, yeah, yeah. You didn't know that already? We can't afford this and we can't afford that. Inflation is going up, and I say that to say, you know, whether y'all like to admit it or not, this is what you voted for. This is the country you wanted. Like, and part of this, ideology of my group is going to always be at the helm. So if the country goes downward, at least I'm going to be sitting higher than everybody else. And it's like, no, that's not what's going to happen. You're going to be saddled with the weight of all of the bad decisions and debts, and everybody in the other groups are going to be cooler than you. But because it's better to be broke, it's better to be poor, and it might sound it's better to be living paycheck to paycheck, or a little bit ahead, or poor than being in debt, and in a massive debt. And that's what's going on. So uh DEI can't fix that, and DEI ain't to blame for that. So I'm gonna leave it at that. You tell me what you think. Like, share, subscribe. Catch you on the next one. Peace.